I'm okay.
Hi, I'm here today with Irene Marshall, another contact that I've made through my LinkedIn journey. And Irene has a pretty cool career that we're going to talk about here, and we'll talk about some trends within her industry. Irene, I'll go ahead and give you a second to introduce yourself and what you do, who you are, and what we're here to talk about today.
Well, thank you. I'm a professional resume writer and a coach. I used to be a recruiter. So I've been helping people get jobs for 24 years now, since 1999. So I love it. I kind of came into it by accident. I don't think people grow up and say, I'm going to be a recruiter. I had a very eclectic career. I started actually as a switchboard operator. And then became what was called a secretary at the time, then an accounting manager. So I had like a very corporate career up to being a recruiter. And then on the side of that, there's always been family businesses. So my husband and I owned an independent auto repair shop for 20 years, it's a horrible industry to be in. I hated the work that I was there. You run an honest business in a difficult industry, glad not to do it. So at one point, I just was exhausted. I was having panic attacks. I just said, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's not this, And so I just quit the job I had and took some time. Luckily, my husband was very supportive. And I actually said, I'll have to go back to accounting because that's the only thing I have. And I went to Robert Half, and it was the height of the dot-com era in the Silicon Valley. And so the person who interviewed me, I mean, he changed my life. He said, I don't know, let me go talk to somebody else. And I got hired then as a recruiter at Robert Half. So, I'm so glad that happened, or I would have been a really unhappy accountant, over time. So, it was kind of serendipity. I have exposure to a lot of things, small businesses, big corporations, franchise, all over the world. And I love having that, broad business experience. So that is kind of because I've had kind of an eclectic career. That's what's come out of it.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I was referring to, and I don't think I could have done it justice. When we spoke last, what was interesting to me, and we'll dive deeper into some of the gender related stuff that I
Mhm.
was asking about last time, but um, you came up during a time period when you mentioned that your role previously was secretary,
Mhm.
and I'm very curious to know more about the recruiting side, and I'll tell you why. I know a lot of recruiter friends. Recruiting for me is really fun, and
Mhm.
I like the headhunting side of it. So my strategy to success on recruiting has always been target the people who like what they're doing,
Mhm.
find out what they like about what they're doing,
Mhm.
and then that's going to be your key in, because if you're looking to fill a role and you know what that role requires,
Mhm.
the best candidate for that job is somebody who's currently doing that and they're
Right.
happy doing it somewhere else.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so you say you got out of recruiting, and I'm curious, was it just because the career counseling and the resume writing was more lucrative, or was there kind of a burnout factor there?
There was some very specific things. What got me with Robert Half, actually, when I started, I actually had an epiphany one day. I was standing at the fax machine, and a job offer came off the fax machine. I said, I can make a difference. Here's a job offer for somebody. And so somebody else would have just thought I was standing there getting something out of the fax. For me, I'm saying, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was 50 years old at the time. So in all that time, I didn't like what I was doing. The reason I quit, there was actually two specific reasons. One of them is we had a family business that was going under, an auto repair shop. We lost that. We lost a tool franchise. So it's really hard to work for like a great big corporate, organization like Robert Half, Fortune 500, and then have an auto repair shop on the side that is not doing well. So that was one of the things. The other thing is I got really tired of being on contingency, because what would happen would be I would do everything to get, to do the placement, get up to the offer, and something would happen that I had no control over. And then, that deal would fall apart. So there were a couple of examples I really remember. A woman, everything was going well. We set it up for her to go to Los Angeles, to meet the CFO and, get blessed for the position. The day before, she says, I'm really sorry, Irene, I have to withdraw. I just found out my mother has uterine cancer. Of course, she had to withdraw, you know,
Yeah.
but then I had to start all over again with what I was doing. So, there was another time I remember where everything was going well. And then the woman came back and she said, well, my boyfriend just got a job in Portland. We're moving. So I'm sorry, it's within that, that kind of like the trial 90 days. Those were things that I had no control over.
Okay.
So that's why I just got frustrated, because when I started as a recruiter, the economy was really good, making a lot of good money. Then it got harder, and it's just frustrating. I did all the work and something that I had no control over. It impacted my paycheck. So that was between a family business not doing well and not making much money and being frustrated. That's what moved me very specifically.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
Yeah,
So, yeah, in your current role, what is the most fulfilling part about what you're doing right now?
helping people get jobs.
Okay.
um, when I was at Robert Half, I really knew I was the best on the candidate side. So then when I left, I said, okay, I like helping people get jobs. What can I do? So that's kind of what led me to being a writer and a coach. It still fills me up when somebody says, I got a job. Because what I know happens is it affects that person, it affects the grandparents, it affects the kids, it affects, I feel like, yes, I've gotten jobs for different people, but it's spread out like, far more than just that one person.
Mhm.
So that is the part for me that keeps me going. And it's even, I actually was kind of making kind of a list for myself. It's not even always the job. Sometimes there are things that are related to it. So, for example, there was a family, the grandparents were in Seattle. Family was here in San Francisco. They wanted the kids to live next to the grandparents. They moved to Seattle. There was somebody else, he lived in Central California. It's really agriculture. The air is horrible there, all the fertilizer and stuff. He had asthma. He didn't belong there. So he got a job in Portland, so
Yeah.
that was better. Another woman I remember, single mom, and her daughter was in high school playing basketball, doing really great. If you have sports in school, you have to provide proof of insurance. Like you have two daughters, like if you're in sports, you have to provide that. She said to me, Irene, whatever salary I can make, I'll figure out how to live on it. I cannot look my daughter in the eye and tell her that she can't play basketball.
Wow.
So to me, it's I know a family that, because I knew the family, the kids' healthcare was come the dad. The dad slept on the couch for 2 or 3 years. I know it was a bad marriage. Once she got a new job and once she knew the kids were covered for healthcare, she filed for divorce. you know, so that's, to me, it's like the specific things is what are somebody's career path? Are they making more money? There's this stuff that's really the specific stuff related to their work and their career. And then to me, it's also all the stuff that spreads out from that.
Okay. It kind of I guess a transition point. You told the story about the lady who, did what she had to do so that her kids could have what they needed.
Right. Right.
Um, you speak very eloquently about the fact that you changed careers at 50, which I think is a whole conversation in and of
It
itself.
is. There's a lot behind that.
Yeah, I know so many people who are in that range right now between 45 and 55, and
Yeah.
they're miserable in their current
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
and they're looking for a way out. They're looking for something better. And so you did this at a
Mhm.
completely different time period when
Yes.
the world was just different. Can you talk us through not only the steps to make the decision where you said, I just got to do this,
Mhm.
but also some of the steps of how did you do it?
Okay. Okay. Um, Kind of what started it was I spent years of my career hating what I did. Cars are hard, mechanics are hard to be around. People are not at their best when they're dealing with their cars. The state didn't like what we were doing with smogs. It's really hard. So I was in a business personally that I didn't like. I was married into it, unless I was going to divorce my husband, there I was. And I really, at one point when I became a recruiter, I'm thinking, I don't want somebody to spend, 25 years of their life in an auto shop hating what they do. So that was one part of it. I think that pushed me. I always think you're pulled into a job and you're pushed out of something. I mean, I really think those two things. So the fact that I really hated what I was doing, that was pushing me out. I was happy that I was able to take some time. I took 5 months. But then when I became a recruiter, it started to make sense why everything was coming together. Why did I think I got an MBA? I don't know. I thought I should. No reason why. Why did I have all this exposure to all these industries? So I think I was open to it. I went in going to accounting. I didn't want to be an accountant anyway. I mean, I really didn't. And now you really wouldn't want to hire me because I'm really slow with what I did. So I think that, but because I think I went in with more than one skill, I sold promotional products for like 8 years. So that's, over and over and over. It's very transactional types of sales. So that's actually why Robert Half hired me, is because I had sales in my background. You didn't have to have an accounting background, but you had to have sales in the background. So I think the fact that it just had worked out that I had an education, I had broad exposure, I had more than one skill set, and I was pretty clear what I wanted and didn't. I was open to it. And because I literally didn't know what a recruiter did because I'd only worked with small businesses at that point. If you have an auto shop, you're not paying for a recruiter or something, so that's what I think part of it was. I ended up with some education and multiple skill sets, and it happened that being a recruiter was it. And when I was interviewing one person, he really did me a favor. He said, Irene, you're going to help people get jobs. You are not a social worker. You have to understand you are working on commission. You're going to be measured by the deals that you close. And that's what it is. And if you don't perform, just like in any sales position, you won't be here. So he said, I had to go with the mindset that this was a sales position.
Yeah. That is a really valid point. I think a lot of folks forget that. And I tell candidates all the time when I hear the complaining about, the recruiter who ghosted me or whatever.
Yeah.
And I go, here's the thing is, I cannot understand or explain the behavior, but what you have to understand is that recruiter is paid based off whether they place you or not.
Absolutely.
And if that recruiter, for any reason, believes that they're not going to place you, that the company's not going to go with you, they're going to shift and pivot, and they're going to go after. Right, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the lessons that I learned, and I must have just aligned with it, that has carried me all the way through, was 3 years as a recruiter. I had one main takeaway, like one. Why should someone hire you instead of somebody else? That is it.
Yep.
Why should someone hire you instead of somebody else? So to me, that really made sense to try to help people to figure that out. So what would happen is a recruiter, someone's trying to hire a controller. So my job was to find 4 to 5 people who I thought could all do the job. But then only one of them was going to get hired. So you want to consider John because of this and Nancy because of that. And it really taught me that only one person was going to get hired. So what I do now is everything is based on that. And then what I think happens is that people get more confidence in themselves. When they can start to articulate it, they start to recognize that, oh yeah, I did do this, I did do that. They start to build confidence. And if there's a through line for my whole career, people who work with me have more confidence when they're done. I have been told that hundreds of times in different ways. So I think it's just that part of that is then trying to get people to tap into what they can do. Somebody's unhappy because they're, it's just at odds with the way they believe about things, with their skill sets, whatever. So if you can not focus on that, but say, okay, but you can do this. How do we focus it so that you will get a job that way? That to me is like the thing that draws. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's the same feedback I get when I work with my clients. And I think that's kind of just the nature of a coach, because that is what people are looking for is, I was exchanging with a gentleman earlier, about the accountability side of being a coach.
Yeah.
And what is interesting about what you do is that you don't have jobs that you're offering them.
No.
And the fact that you're simply helping them produce a better document that sells their story, and you're giving them the confidence to go out and sell that document. It's pretty powerful. And that's the most rewarding part for me, is when I get those notes back from people saying it was that 30 minutes a week that I get with you, that's what put me over the edge. Yeah. And then and I'm sure you see this as well when you review somebody's resume and they have outstanding credentials, and they're not thinking,
Right,
they're beating themselves down because we are
exactly.
always our own worst critics.
Yeah.
Um, I have a client that doesn't see how much value they bring to the table, and
Hmm.
I'm stunned by it, and I think that they do now. And now
Yeah.
that they've opened up their horizon, and they've said, okay, I'm going to aim at a bigger target because I'm
Okay.
capable of that bigger
Yes.
target. Yeah, that so I agree with you. I think it's super rewarding, and that's really what drives me at this.
Well, I think there's two things. There's writers who don't coach and coaches who don't write.
Hmm.
So I get referrals from people that way. For me, it is all the same process. Where are you in the process? Do you really need some interview coaching? Maybe you don't know what you want to do when you're growing up. You have a resume that you just don't feel good about. So I'm a generalist in that way because I don't focus just on writing or coaching. I mean, it really is to me, it's like the whole process. Where are we and how can I help?
Hmm.
So I think that's an advantage rather than having it be siloed.
Yeah.
I worked at one point with an organization. They had the coaches were over here and the writers were over here, and you had a team. In theory, that was great. In practicality, it didn't fit with me because if I was coaching, I really ended up talking to people about their resumes. I mean, I just couldn't help it. So
Right.
once you become a recruiter, you always look at things with the recruiter's eyes, and you would know that. So.
So I'm curious, based on your experiences and some of the
Mhm,
things we talked about last time when you were coming up, I'm curious how you coach young
mhm,
professional women coming up in the industry today because of some of the discrimination that you've seen, some of the discrimination
mhm,
that you've faced being a young
mhm.
professional woman coming up in corporate America. How do you coach through that? Because I can tell you how I coach through it, but I'm an old white guy. I'm
Yeah,
curious
yeah.
how, from a woman's perspective, what advice do you give them?
I think there's several things, trying to put my thoughts together with it. I think particularly with women, it's hard to kind of speak well of yourself. So like the story I always have, my grandmother, I love dearly, she would say, Irene, I know you're getting straight A's in school. And I remember way she would say, it's totally unbecoming for you to talk about yourself that way. Now I'm your grandma. I have full bragging rights. You're my granddaughter. You're doing this
Hmm.
and that. But I really got a clear differentiation about what she was able to brag about me and what was appropriate for me. I have had so many people, so many women tell me that they got the same message one way
Okay.
or the other. So it's kind of what are the expectations? How do you talk about yourself? So I think if you've had that in your growing up, I think it has to be able to, recognize that, yes, that was kind of what I was taught was appropriate for a woman, and then somehow be able to put that in a certain type of perspective.
Okay.
I would think another seriously would be to one way or another figure out how to have somebody be able to mentor you. I went, it's a long story, but I went from switchboard operator to accounting manager. There were three men who I was, I didn't like what I was doing anymore. They pushed me into being an accounting manager. And I didn't know debit from credit. I had no education, but all three of them had a different role, kind of. I mean, I was really fortunate who gets three managers at one time. And they made all the difference for me, all the difference because they believed in me and put me, it was like going into the deep end of the pool. So that was one of them. So try to get past the fact you're not supposed to speak too highly about yourself. See what you can do to be able to find a mentor. And it really can be their man or woman. I don't think it
Hmm.
particularly matters. Mine happened to be three men. And then I've turned around and tried to be mentor to other people. So I think those are two things. I think sometimes what happens is people get an imbalance. If you think of like a triangle here, you have your experience, you have your education, and you have training. I think if you can get kind of a balance between those, it makes it easier to move forward. So for example, I didn't know debit from a credit, and I would have to go to one of the accountants who worked for me. I had like 20 people under me. Is this supposed to be debit or credit? I don't know how to do this. I was learning from the people, who were teaching me, because then at one point I went back to school. So I had a gap with that. Sometimes though, people will say, I'm doing great, but I don't have a college education. Okay, let's put that into a perspective. Is that a problem? Is it not a problem? It took me 8 years to go back
Hmm.
and get my undergraduate and MBA. So I think trying to somehow get some some balance in your career, because then you're going to get hired for something specific, but you're also going to get hired because of what you can do in general and what your knowledge and your experience is. So that's one of the things I think. If you need to go back to school, figure it out. If you really need more training, whatever that might be. So I think it can be, you get out of balance somehow. So if you're trying to plan your career, don't just go to school. It's too much work and too expensive just to go to school. You have to know why you're there.
Yeah, so you've said something a few times. I want to draw it out and make sure people are
Sure.
hearing it. So earlier when we talked about your transition and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you made a transition at a time in your life when a lot of other people are planning their retirement, they're
Yeah,
looking down the barrel of 10 to 15 more years of the grind, and then I get to
yeah,
go and do whatever.
absolutely.
You said you came to the table with multiple skill sets,
Mm-hmm.
multiple toolboxes, if you will,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's what helped you to be qualified to make a change. And then I'm hearing you talk about what advice you give, and what I'm hearing overall is you have to be versatile, you have to be flexible, you have to have, you have to be as valuable as possible to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that attitude. And I'm curious though, for your opinion,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that the attitude that you have towards, be as valuable as I possibly can be to the organization,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is that something that was taught to you? Was it something that was mentored for you by, parents or whatever?
Right.
Or do you think you learned that through the struggles because you were trying to save a failing business while you weren't happy in your professional, I
Mm-hmm.
get,
Mm-hmm.
they're both
Mm-hmm.
professional lives because you were making
Yes.
money off both.
Right.
So just curious if it was struggle or was it mentorship? Because it's a heck of an attitude.
Yeah. Well, part of it I think was luck. Some of it, you
Okay,
know.
fair,
Um,
fair enough.
I went to a startup in the 80s. It was artificial intelligence. Oh my goodness, I had no idea we were that far ahead of ourselves. So I think in my case, it really was not by intent. I did not plan my career. One job went to another job, went to another job through my network. I had no resume for 17 years. So to me, that kind of, because the relationships grew, and that's kind of what moved me from one job to another. So I think it's kind of it. If I planned for it, that would be great. I would have gotten out of the auto shop sooner if I could have. But I think it just happened. I think because I was aware of what was happening, that I could kind of try to take advantage of it. If you own a small business, you own it when you can't cash your own paycheck, then you own the business. you know,
Right.
there's
So,
another, I'm sorry.
well, I like that where you are writing it off to say, I think it was just luck. I'll disagree slightly with that.
Mhm.
And, there's a guy that I've also connected with on LinkedIn. His name is Trevor,
Mhm.
and he talks about the warrior mentality.
Mhm.
And, that is what I'll attribute it to, because I'm hearing you tell these stories, not just now, but in our previous conversation
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
well. And I think luck has a lot to do with it, but I also think it's a lot of hard work. And I,
Yes,
I think
yes,
you forge your character out of all of the life lessons that you learn.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
And
and
that starts as a kid. I mean,
yes.
I grew up in a family where in my family it was music. I learned how to play the piano when I was 4. My grandmother would say, "I know you don't want. We've got friends. I'm paying for your lessons. You're going to go there with a good attitude, and you're going to play."
Hmm.
All the life lessons you get from music, and the work ethic. My mom was a single mom. My grandfather sold, New York life insurance for his whole career. So I was in a family where, there wasn't $1 million in the bank, and everybody worked. And if you were going to school, that was your job to be able to do that. I want to loop back a little bit to one of the things about kind of what makes you valuable, and like
Hmm.
particularly for women. I'm thinking, I think the other way to do it is to be very focused, not for a period of time, but people can still change. But for example, I worked with somebody, started with treasury at a bank. She went like up as far as you can go, basically with treasury. She was good at it. She made good money. She liked it. She had a good career. She was focused with that. And that was going to keep her in banking, but she was fine with that. It happens that she wants to go do something else at the moment, but that was another way she made herself valuable. I'm working with somebody else who does a lot with data manipulation. She works for Silicon Valley Bank, the one that just, went under.
Yeah.
She has such a niche of what she does because it's such high level analysis of data. She says, Irene, that's great. They really need me. There's nothing else I can do. She was so specialized and in the banking. She was very appreciated. They were compensating her well, but she did at a certain point limit herself, and she's either in her 50s or 60s. So there's pros and cons of making yourself to be a real subject matter expert someplace. But then there's even where if somebody is involved with environmental stuff, okay, well, there's a lot of ways to be doing that. So I think it's a combination. You either decide you're really, really going to be a specialist, just try to not make sure that you box yourself in, try to make sure that you're in a field that where there's career growth, or in someone like me, someone's going to hire me because I've done a lot. So I think there's kind of two different ways to think about it.
Okay. I don't disagree with you. I think that every journey is going to be slightly different, and everybody's going to react to that journey slightly different. So, you talked about the auto business and that being a business that you're in with your husband, and so from a wife's perspective, what were some of the challenges as that business went under that while you are relaunching yourself, your professional brand, your husband's dealing with this. Can you talk through from your perspective how you helped him deal with that?
Yeah, there's the beginning of it is actually an interesting story. He got hired. It was a small shop for mechanics. Now they're called technicians. At the time, mechanics. 4 guys. It was a small shop. So he got hired as a mechanic. So that's where we started with it. He's not very good. He had an accident. He has one hand that has problems with it. So he got let go. So, and the person who let him go did not change the locks. And most of the time, if you walk into an auto shop, all the people's toolboxes, they own those. The shop doesn't own it. The shop buys the big ticket stuff, but you buy your own stuff. So, but he knew Curtis was honest, so he didn't change the locks. So that was like a symptom of whatever. Then at a certain point, he said, "What's Curtis doing? He's selling cars. Have him talk to me." They switched roles. So Sandy wanted to go back to fixing cars, and then he said he would teach Curtis how to, do the surface right and take care of the customers. So that's where it started. And as a couple, we said, don't really want to do this, but we're never going to get an opportunity like this again. How is this going to happen? So, like any couple, you have to learn, what to do. It happened to be a business that the roles were pretty different. He can't do the bookkeeping, and I'm never going to learn how to fix a car. So in that case, it was easier. It's not like we were both in sales or something or other. There was kind of a balance, but I think our marriage was strong. And so I think it kept the marriage strong. It was one of the ways. I think if you work together, I think it's either hard on your marriage or you strengthens your marriage. That's what I think.
Okay.
But then where it got to be difficult, he basically stopped paying attention. And he started being involved with endurance bike riding. And, he trained for 2 years, and he went with a group, 23 days. He, on his bicycle, went from San Diego to Charleston. That's more than 100 days a day, more than 100 miles a day for 23 days. Wow. So, yeah. So for me as a wife, like, here we have a business. He's not paying much attention to the business. And yeah, he's going to go this fabulous bike ride, but we have a business that isn't going well for us. That was the conflict. That was because he got distracted by something else. It's a huge goal. I mean, you probably don't know anybody who's ridden their bicycle that far, that type of endurance riding. So as a wife, I had a conflict because personally, that's what he wanted to do. It did not help the business. And then his health got bad. So with the medical tool franchise, it really was his health. He lost his health.
Okay.
And that can be another thing. So we were like, I kept taking $5,000 a month out of our savings, for a long time. And finally, this isn't working. So I think keeping good health, trying to keep some kind of balance with what you want to do personally and professionally, it's a process,
Yeah. Well, I like what you say about the strong marriage because, I see so many people failing and
Yeah,
they're not committed to each other.
right.
And I think that that's the number one thing I will
Mhm.
attribute to my career success is having a strong marriage and knowing,
Absolutely, absolutely.
and people, I think they get confused when you talk about a strong relationship. Because I can
Mhm.
tell you right now, my strong relationship is not me coming home telling my wife about a bad day and my wife saying, "Well, it
Right.
sounds like you did everything right today." Um,
Yeah.
my wife will absolutely tell me where I screwed up, and
Mhm.
she has no problem calling me out and telling me where I need to be better.
Yeah,
And that to me, and the strong marriage part of that is that, you have to be willing to hear it
yeah,
because, in your case, your business partners and your life partners,
right.
um, there's so much skin there.
Yes,
And, so I can't imagine that those conversations had to be difficult.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, but at the same time, I applaud you for having the strength of having those conversations because
Mhm.
the easy thing to do, specifically during the time period that you had to do this, my wife's side of the family, certain members of the male side of my wife's family
Mhm.
would say,
Mhm.
submissive wife, happy life.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, I think that you had some real big challenges,
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
socially, professionally. So I applaud you for that strength because I think that it's certainly a challenge, and it's a challenge today in 2023. I can't imagine the challenge in
It
1980.
was. Well, and our marriage started in kind of an unusual way. We didn't know each other. It's a long story. We lived in a community. We were introduced on a Sunday. Basically, I moved in on Wednesday and we got married on Saturday. And that was 42 years ago.
Wow.
So we did, in fact, have a 1 week courtship.
Which,
So,
which isn't it's actually it's more common. Like I hear more and
yeah,
more people
yes,
married for 7 or 8 decades, and that's how it started. They
yeah,
they they
right,
met young, they knew each other a very small amount of time, and then got married.
yeah. And I think what that does is the initial connection was there was an emotional connection, there was like an energy connection, whatever all that is, it's certainly not an analytical thing in a week's time.
Hmm.
So I think just the fact that we started with an immediate kind of like a bang like that, that gave a good foundation for it.
So you've made several transitions through this
Mhm,
time period.
mhm,
You've dealt with your husband's health.
mhm.
Did having a job and having health insurance, did that contribute positively?
My husband wouldn't be here. Like, there's no, I mean, even just this year, he had a major heart attack in January. That was like,
Mm,
a few months ago. He's
wow.
got so much stuff wrong with him. You do not want to let me, it's like literally head to toe. I've been in the emergency. You don't want to get to be friends with the people in the emergency room. I mean, we've been in and out and in and out and in and out because he's had serious, fell down, broke his neck, fell down, 9 staples in his head. The last one, he fell down and made a hole in the wall.
Wow.
So we're with Kaiser. I appreciate it every single day. We have had people have bad experiences. The emergency end of things been fine. As an organization, they're more focused about health and wellness and keeping the medical stuff. Um, the doctors we've always met have been great. We happen to live close to it. He for sure would not be here. I have zero question. If he hadn't gotten the care he did in January, he couldn't. He stopped breathing. So that's affected everything. And that's part of was why those two businesses failed. If you're gonna like for me, okay, and with you, if I'm not here, if I'm not healthy, I'm not making any money. So I think good health is really key.
So Tools for Transition is the name of your current company.
Mhm.
And just so everybody knows, is this a company that you own?
Yeah, it's me.
Okay. And you've been doing that now for about 20 years?
Yes, I started as a recruiter in 99, left in 2003, started this business in 23. And I've had different times. I've had some contract writers. I've been a
Mhm.
contract writer myself. It's kind of gone back and forth, but yeah, it's me. So sometimes people, for writers, they never meet the resume writer. I'm the resume writer. What you get? Yeah, so it's me. And
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
So if somebody's watching this right now and
Mhm,
they're in this transition mode where they don't
mhm,
know they don't know what they're doing wrong, but they're not
mhm,
getting phone calls
mhm,
back. How
mhm.
how would they get in contact with you to determine whether or not you'd be a good fit for them?
It's very simple. If you go to my website, which is toolsfortransition.com, I have a scheduler. Go ahead and schedule a call. There's no charge for consultation.
Okay.
All we're trying to figure out is, okay, what do you need? Am I the right person for it? We're just trying to figure out if I can satisfy and get you what you need. So that's really how you start with me. And I don't let everybody engage me. I have 20 years of happy clients.
Mhm.
And that's because I am careful on who I take on as a client. And my criteria is very clear also. Will you be engaged in your own process? That I have to have a sense with that. I've
Yeah.
had times where, adult parents have paid for adult kids for my services, and I returned my money to somebody. I said, your kid isn't doing anything. I know he's 24, but I'm not gonna take your money. I can't do anything more because he won't engage. So to me, that is the primary thing.
So
And
I agree with that. I think engagement. In fact, it's something. There's a guy, Bob Berman, on LinkedIn.
mhm,
He talks about that as well. He
mhm,
talks very openly about the fact
yeah,
that he'll cut a client if the client's not putting it in.
right, right.
Um, which to me that was interesting that he so openly talked about it.
Oh yeah,
And so if someone is willing to put in the commitment,
yes,
the work, obviously they got to do the
mhm,
work,
yeah,
but
exactly.
what type of commitment would they be looking at financially? Do you have a set tier structure, or is it based on the specifics of the situation?
I have more than one way.
Okay.
I sometimes, it's a la carte. I mean, I'll be finishing up somebody's quote this afternoon. I'm saying if you do the resume and LinkedIn, it's this. If you do it as a package, it's this. So like that's one way that works. Sometimes I really am giving a flat quote of, flat fee. Sometimes I'm on retainer,
Okay.
so we do it that way. I do take 100% payment up front. I don't want to be on contingency,
Mhm.
don't, and people figure out how to do that. The other thing that makes me different from some of my colleagues. I am definitely a generalist. At the beginning of doing this, 10, 15 years, people would say, Irene, you need to find a niche. I know of one person, she's a Harvard attorney. She didn't want to be attorney. Her clients are only attorneys. She doesn't even work with paralegals anymore. For
Mhm.
me, I'm fine, all the way from, truck driver all the way up to C-suite. I like that variety. And I've experienced in all these industries. I don't have to know about all the industries. I have to know enough so that I can do it properly, do the writing properly. But I think when somebody comes to me, I am much broader in my background of who it is I've worked with than most of my colleagues. So I think that is one of the things. And my criteria has to be, can I figure out why someone should hire you instead of somebody else? So like at one point I had two pharmacists that each had PhDs. How does Kaiser hire a pharmacist with a PhD? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything for them because I don't know how it was going to be hired. And besides, I needed a dictionary because all their stuff was science. So to me, if somebody is not, I mean, really, I can't do it if I need a dictionary. So me, it really was, will somebody be engaged? Will somebody, know and understand that I have a broad background that brings a lot? If I don't think I'm going to do it right, I'm going to refer to somebody else. Just am.
So that was my next question.
Yeah.
So if so, you have a conversation and you say, I can't help you," or
Mhm,
I am super selective who
mhm,
I
mhm,
work with
mhm.
because I like to have fun. And if the person
Absolutely.
doesn't have a positive, upbeat
Yeah.
attitude,
Yeah.
now I see through that surface level of I'm nervous, I'm awkward, I'm uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes.
But if we are talking for a half hour and I can't get you to smile, I can't get you to be happy about anything,
Right. Right.
and you're not in chronic pain, then
Mhm.
I won't work with you. In fact, I won't even refer you to anybody.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
have done that. I've got a Rolodex of people that I trust that are different than me,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming. Do you do the same thing, or do you just prefer the "Hey, I'm not right for you"?
Um, I try to figure out, I never want to just say to somebody, sorry, I can't help you, that's it. I try to find, is there a way that maybe I can help you with part of this? Like I've had it happen where I can help you with the resume, but I'm going to refer you to somebody else for the interview coaching, or it's been the other way around. So sometimes I can help somebody partially, and for me, I have to know, am I qualified? Or is this like a stretch for me? Because I
Yeah.
work all the time with people, a few months ago, he's a hedge fund expert. I don't know about hedge funds. I don't know. So for me, for trying to figure that out is, am I qualified? And part of it is chemistry. It's very, people say all kinds of things to me. I mean, I make, you have to make safe space. And it's the same with what you do. And I hate that phrase, safe space, but people talk. If you give them a chance, they'll talk and talk through things.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things one of the reasons I can work with such a variety of people is I respect each role. Okay, I spent 20 years with auto mechanics. Okay, most of them don't have education. Cars are hard. Cars are hard. If you can do the diagnosis, you are really good at what you do. So I think just that exposure, I've have a lot of respect, like for people in the skilled trades, something like that. I have one colleague, he's kind of a snob, but he's fine. He doesn't work with anybody who isn't making at least $250,000 on us.
I have seen that. I see
Yeah,
that a
yeah,
lot
yes.
in executive coaching. I see it a lot too.
And he makes more money than I do. So,
But that's
so
part
that's
of why
fine.
they do it, is
Yes,
they target the higher end clients
yeah,
because they
yeah,
know that they can charge what they charge.
yeah, exactly.
For me, it's not about a money grab.
Mhm,
I'm fortunate to have a full-time job that I
mhm,
absolutely love.
mhm,
So I can be picky and I can take
mhm.
on
Yeah,
projects that really just make me happy. So
yeah, yeah. Well, I love what I do. When COVID happened and I had an office, my lease was about up. I had to decide, what was I going to do at the time? I was 70. Okay, if I was going to retire, that was when,
yeah,
rather than do all the trouble. But at that point, I really had to decide: do I want to keep doing this? I work part time. I don't work the hours I used to, but the work never gets old. And like, why would I stop? Why would I stop with it? You
yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, it's a great career to keep your mind sharp and to keep
Yes.
you up on the
Yep.
industry and the
Yep.
trends. Yeah, I agree with you. So, well, so if you're looking for career advice, if you're looking for resume help, and you've watched this video and you love Irene as much as I do, because I think she's amazing at she claims she's 70 years old. I don't believe her, but I didn't check her
Oh,
ID.
73. Like
Yeah.
little kids, right? It's like 4.5.
Yeah. Well, if it's true, you've earned every second of it, and I would take credit
Absolutely.
for it. But
Absolutely.
it's so hard to believe with just how much you have to give.
Thank you.
And I think you're making 73 look like the new 53. So way to go.
Good. Good. Well, thank
Um,
you for having the chance to talk with you. Absolutely.
yeah, so check out Irene's website. Check out Irene's LinkedIn page. The links are in the comments section of this
Mhm,
video,
mhm.
and they will be shared everywhere that this video is shared. Uh,
Fabulous.
Irene, thank you so much. And do you have anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Oh, I think the only thing is if we want to talk, there's like no charge for that. Let's just talk and figure out if it works. So I don't want that to ever be a blanket to keep somebody. Let's just talk. And then, then we figure it out from there. So I think that's the only thing. I leave that door open to, can we do business together?
Awesome. Well, I will tell you, Irene is super easy to do business with. She got a random message from this crazy guy that says, "Hey, we're connected. Let's jump on a Zoom
Right.
call."
Right.
And we were on that Zoom call within 24 hours. We
Yeah.
chatted it up. We had fun. So I'm grateful for the connection, Irene. I'm grateful to have you as a
Thank
friend.
you.
Thank you for doing this video. And I know that somebody who's watching this um, needs your help. And I think that we have opened that door for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you for watching the video. I do want to ask, please subscribe to the channel. hit like, comment on the video, hit the bell on the drop down if you want to be
Mhm,
notified when all my
mhm,
videos go live.
mhm.
And I'm grateful for your continued support. So thank you very
That's
much.
great. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.